Welcome to another installment of the 9 Old Men series. We've covered a lot of old men on this channel, but never a grumpy one. Well, maybe not grumpy, but he was definitely vocal with what he wanted. He was also an inspiring artist and an excellent animator. What makes him so special? Let's find out. Milt was born in San Francisco in 1909 and later attended school in the big city. Milt grew up in a poor family.
My parents were terribly poor. My father was had a little talent, but was not an educated man the least bit.
To make ends meet, he cut his high school education short. However, he was talented enough to pursue his dream in becoming a magazine illustrator and cartoonist. While studying art, he worked retouching photos and pasting up layouts at the Oakland Post-Inquirer. Here he met a young man named Ham Lusk, a future Disney great who would change the animator's life forever. He followed this by working at the San Francisco Bulletin. Milt then started his own commercial art business, which inched by after the Great Depression hit. This is when he caught the animation bug, so to speak.
When the Disney productions made The Three Little Pigs, that just really captivated me, and I just loved the medium,
Around this time, Milt, like many Americans, was desperately looking for work. Work in art was specifically hard to come by, and so it was a welcome surprise when Milt's old co-worker, Ham Lusk, who was by now working for Disney, recommended him for a job. Milt quickly took the offer and was hired by the Disney studio on June 25, 1934. Now for many artists, especially for members of Walt's 9 Old Men, this would be the point where I talk about how fast Milt climbed the ladder at Disney and was instantly recognized for his talent. But this wasn't quite true for Milt. Instead, he stayed as an in-betweener for quite a while. A lot of this was due to the fact that he never went to college and had a very limited formal art training. But the main reason he got attention back in his in-betweening days was his very outspoken, rebellious nature. When I first met Milt, his language was so peppered with curse words, you'd never guess he had a very high IQ, remembered Ken Anderson. After a few months, Khal began to work with Bill Roberts, who he stayed with for approximately a year. Unfortunately, their animation styles didn't mesh, and so Milt reached out to other sources to improve his skill. Grayson Ponte writes, Milt found stimulation and inspiration from attending action analysis classes, taught by the great Chouinard teacher, Don Graham. Don Graham was a fine instructor, reflected the animator. I disagreed with him on almost anything as far as drawing was concerned, but he made me think. When you say someone's wrong, and he's given it some thought, you've got to defend your point of view, and it makes you think. Milt's first time as a full-fledged animator was on Mickey's Circus, a short released in 1936. The first really good chance I had was when Ben Sharpstein gave me a sequence of 2 or 3 scenes in Mickey's Circus, which wasn't one of our better shorts, explained the animator. Talk about control. Ben asked me to pose the whole scene out to show him what I was going to do with it. I brought these drawings out to him, and he looked at them, and then he sat looking out the window for quite a while, and I thought, oh jeez. Then he finally said, all right, that looks pretty good. I pretty near had a heart attack in the meantime. Pretty soon after, he was assigned onto the unit of animators who worked on the animals in Snow White, which included Jim Algar and Eric Larson. Khal animated several scenes on the film and did some very well thought out and studied animation, most notably in scenes involving the turtle character. After Snow White, he returned to animating on shorts such as Lonesome Ghosts, The Ugly Duckling, and Ferdinand the Bull.
I did the voice of Ferdinand the Bull when he was. There's only one line in the picture when he's a little bull, In fact, I think Walt did his mother. She said, Ferdinand, why don't you go out and play with all the other little bulls and butt your head? And he said,
I like it better here.
I can't do the voice anymore.
Where I can just sit quietly and smell the flowers.
Now, Ferdinand, why don't you play with all the other little bulls and butt your head? But Ferdinand would shake his head.
I like it better here, where I can sit just quietly and smell the flowers.
Disney's next film would be Milt's moment to prove his true talent in animation. In Pinocchio's early production, the artists were having a hard time designing a likable main character. Frank and Ollie had put their hand in and failed to pump out a likable design that pleased Walt. Milt, however, knew exactly what they were doing wrong.
They were thinking in terms of a puppet all the time, naturally, because he was a puppet. and I didn't like what they had very much, and I handled it as a little boy, really.
A little wooden boy.
Then I was put in charge of the unit that did Pinocchio, you see, and so I was a supervising animator on it, see, and that was a big jump for me, you know. That was that really got me started as being one of the top line people. If I had the right build and the right figure and the right face and all that, I could be a very good actor. An animator is you have to be part actor, part director, part storyman. You have to have a very good feeling for entertainment. What's entertainment and what isn't, you know, and so you're kind of a jack of all trades. As far you really are. The thing is, you're not limited by your sex or by your weight or anything. You can do anything.
By the end of Pinocchio, Milt had proven his ability to animate and shown off his excellent draftsmanship skills. This made him perfect for designing the deer in Bambi. On Bambi, the animals had to be so believable, accurate, and lifelike that intense study into the anatomy of animals was essential. However, anatomy alone wasn't going to be able to make the animals talk. For this, Milt had to find a happy medium between believability and fantasy.
In appearance, physical appearance, we came as close to as we figured we possibly could to the real deer and still be able to articulate for dialogue and get and have a full range of expressions.
Go on, say hello.
Hello.
I think that I had as much to do with the Disney style, with creating a Disney style as anybody over the years.
My favorite scene of his on the film is the one where Thumper nervously and innocently repeats, "If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all."
He doesn't walk very good, does he?
Thumper?
Yes, Mama.
What did your father tell you this morning?
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
He couldn't remember his lines, you know. You had to feed him a few words at a time, you know. See, that's the only way you could do it. And you say he doesn't walk very good, does he? You know, you could say that.
Milt continues. The kid who supplied the voice was only 4 years old, and he had a little trouble remembering the lines, and it showed. So we got the same hesitation into the animation. We even added time between nice and don't. So he says nice, takes a breath, and nothing comes out. He suddenly can't remember a thing. He's fooling around with his foot and looking at his mother out of one eye. He tries real hard to remember and almost has to squeeze the second part out. Then he's proud that he remembered it, and he turns to his mother, but she gives him this immodest look, and he's sort of sheepish. The main thing is that in this case, you have fairly subtle ideas, but the change of mood he goes through is strong enough to make the scene successful. They sell themselves to the audience. Another great scene is when Bambi is learning to walk.
Bambi, get up! Try again!
Following Bambi, Milt got assigned to The Wind in the Willows. But the U.S. involvement in World War II put all of Disney's projects on hold. Instead, Milt began working on a number of packaged films and war propaganda films made to keep the studio afloat. It was here that Milt entered what is considered his cartoony phase, first seen in Milt's animation of Donald riding a llama in Los Amigos.
Evidentemente non piace.
Grayson Ponte writes, "Personally, I'm a nut for Milt's timing on the llama, as well as the absolutely brilliant grace, pantomime, and choreography he gave to the character. Although he actually liked to do comic cartoony characters a lot, Milt didn't quite have the flair that animators like Ward Kimball, John Lasbury, and John Sibley did for doing very archetypical, broadly handled characters, although personally I believe the cartooning stuff he did get to do was terrific. However, there still is quite a bit of difference in his broad style compared to those of the other guys. One deviation from this cartoony phase was his performance in Education for Death.
In molding the young Nazi mind, Hitler becomes Hans's idol.
Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil! Bedingungslos Gehorsam für den Führer des Deutschen Reiches.
Hans recovered. Back in school, he's giving his daily pledge to fight, obey, and die for his Führer.
On the comic end, one of Milt's outstanding performances during this time was the Tiger in Tiger Trouble. Grayson Ponte writes, "I love the fact that although he is handled broadly, the feline still has great psychological precision, expertly structured poses, and brilliant timing done in a way that only Milt could." Ken Anderson recalls, Milt was the butt of remarks implying he wasn't capable of animating outlandish cartoon characters. Then one day on Tiger Trouble, he got a far-out cartoon tiger to animate, and the results were so fantastic they quieted the remarks forever.
The Royal Bengal Tiger, Lord of the Jungle, a cruel, merciless killer. He eats nothing but meat. Man, he likes to eat. A man-eater.
From here, he did some amazing work on Song of the South. And on Melody Time, he would enter the next phase of his career, straight, realistic characters. He was assigned 2 segments in this short: Pecos Bill's Girlfriend, Swingfoot Sue,
and then that bustle. Underneath them frills and flounces, Sue's developing plenty of bounces. Got to be more than that gal could handle.
And Sue took off like a Roman candle.
and Johnny Appleseed, which he really hated animating.
Are the characters that are middle range. One of the worst ones I had to do was Johnny Appleseed. He was just a mild-mannered little guy who never got mad at anybody.
The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and rain and an apple seed. Yes, he's been good to me.
This isn't where we leave this legend. He has an extensive career at Disney, so stay tuned for more. In the meantime, check out this series of videos about Ward Kimball, or maybe learn about the voice behind Disney's most famous cricket. Thanks for watching. See you next time.